Hi, good morning everyone. My name is Benjamin Gaines and I'm the event coordinator for the Alternative Asset Management Hackathon. As you know, this event is now a remote event, and so I wanted to put forth a video to help answer anyone's questions ahead of time and just clear any confusion. So the purpose of this short video is first, just make sure everyone's aware of the goal of the hackathon, and then secondly, make sure everyone knows it's a remote event and that everyone has a clear understanding of how to participate in this event, given that it is now remote. Here's a look at what we'll be covering. Okay, the short version. So the purpose of this hackathon is to pioneer a more scalable and data-driven approach to identifying private investment opportunities in the PE space, and we'll cover that more in depth later. Participants who submit their work will be evaluated on 4 criteria. First, the creativity they display in their approach. Secondly, the quality of information. Then the quantity of the information. And lastly, their ability to explain the work that they performed. Obviously, everything has to be documented. This event is remote, as I've mentioned before. It'll start at 9 o'clock on Saturday, March the 21st, and it'll end at 6 p.m. The following Sunday. That's Eastern Standard Time. And all the participation will be guided through GitHub. We'll also have a Slack channel open throughout the event, and we'll cover those shortly. A little bit of context for anyone who's not aware what alternative asset management is, or just the nature of this challenge. And I'll pause here for a second. So conceptually, big picture, an investor has several options in which to invest, or through which to invest their money. The one that comes to mind for most people is publicly traded investments, so people investing in stocks or index funds. And when someone invests in a publicly traded company, they have a lot of information about that company because the SEC requires the disclosure of financial information for publicly traded companies, and they even standardize the formatting of this information. With private companies, that is not the case. And so this collectively is called alternative asset management, and it includes many things, to include private equity, which will be the focus of this hackathon, venture capital, hedge funds, real estate. There's lots in this space. The challenge, as I've alluded to thus far, is that the information in this space is not standardized. And so it can therefore be difficult to obtain, to clean, to use, and to invest in this space, one has to be able to smartly model data. And the opportunity there is that there's, of course, a whole industry around this, which is called the alt data industry. And no single group has kind of solved this problem. It's an open-ended problem, and there's a lot of opportunity in this space. And so that's why we're focusing on it for this hackathon. And so, as I mentioned before, the mission in this hackathon is to pioneer a scalable and data-driven approach to identifying companies in which to invest, and companies that meet the following characteristics, which is set forth here. I won't read through all of them. Feel free to pause the screen and review. What I would note, however, is that in this hackathon, it is not required to find a way to solve all 10 of these criteria, not even close. Just a good approach to even solving one of them is an acceptable submission, and because this is a lot of different information to try to parse through. In the GitHub repository, which we'll show here momentarily, we've put a couple of example data sources up. And to be clear, these data sources are simply just what we're calling a jump start. And what we mean by that is, if you're new to this challenge, or maybe you're new to programming or data science and data engineering, and you just want to get started, this is a great way to do it. I think there's a lot of good information in these data sources, and it can just help you get up and running. And something we want to be clear on, however, is that this event is not at all limited to this data. You can bring in any data, you can create new data sets. It is a wide open challenge. This information here is simply just a resource so that if you're looking to get started quickly and you don't want to spend several hours Googling different data sets you can find, this is a good way to start. And there's samples of all this data in the GitHub repository. This will be a 2-day event hosted remotely. I won't read through all of these times. I'll just talk through the 3 that are highlighted. The first is the kickoff brief, which is Saturday, the 21st of March at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This will be a Zoom webinar. And the link for this is in the GitHub repository. This is not required. So if you feel that you have enough information from this brief and from going through the repository that you can just start the work, you can just start the work. We'll host this kickoff brief to repeat much of what I'm talking about right now and then answer anyone's questions as they get started. The next key event is 6 p.m. on Sunday, and this is when all submissions must be uploaded by. And then Monday, the following day at 6 p.m., we'll announce the winners, and we'll send that out through Slack and through email, and then we'll contact the individual winners to see how they want to receive the $1,000 prize. I'll show the repository quickly. So here's the address, and you can find that also in the event page. So in the repo, what you'll see is just some quick links to get started. The PowerPoint, which I'm reviewing right now, you can download it and look at it for yourself. Obviously, the video which you're watching. We've got an example of a submission in here, so if you're just wondering what the standard would be or what type of information you need to submit, here it is. Link to the Slack channel, the FAQ, and then this is the link to the kickoff call if you're interested in participating. And then the Jumpstart data that I'd mentioned, you'll see that we've got several data sources uploaded in here and a little bit of documentation to them below in the README file. I would note that each of these data sources is just a sample. So for instance, if you go to the SBA, here are just 2 sample documents. If you wanted to explore it further, you would obviously have to go to the website and see what they have available. But in each of these directories, we just have a small sample so you get an idea of the type of information that's contained in that website. Okay, for those submitting their work, there are 3 things that need to be submitted. First is just a list of companies that you found through your work. And this can just be a simple Excel file, a CSV, TSV, any flat file works. It doesn't have to be in any fancy format. Secondly is an explanation of the work that was performed. And this too does not need to be in a sophisticated format. A Word document or a PowerPoint is fine. You can upload your work in a markdown file in the README of your repository. This does not have to be fancy. It just has to be a clear explanation of what you did. And there's guidance for this also in the repository, and you can see the example. And then lastly, a copy of any of the code that you created to perform the work in the hackathon. There are 2 ways to submit your work. The preferred option is to create a GitHub repository and share it with us. So you can fork or clone the current one and then share your work through that. If you're uncomfortable with GitHub or you're just new to it, email submissions are fine. Just email your work to hackathon@jackpotinsights.com. We would also note, however, just make sure that you get a response back. We'll be monitoring it, but when you submit, I want to send a little note on Slack too, just to let someone know that you emailed your work so people will be looking for it. Some useful resources. As previously mentioned, the GitHub repository contains all the information you'll need. There's a coaching staff for this event. We were really excited about bringing them in person because there's folks from private equity and there are data engineers and data scientists and just a handful of folks that could be a good resource for the event participants. That staff will still be monitoring Slack, and we're going to have an open office hours, if you will, from 5 to 6 o'clock on Saturday, where all that staff will dial in on a webinar and they can answer any questions you might have in stride. But along the way, as you're working, feel free to post your questions in Slack, and that coaching staff will reach out to you. Particularly if you have questions about private equity and the nature of the work itself, not just a technical aspect, but you want to get insights from someone who works in this space from the finance side. There'll be folks there to help you out. There's an FAQ available on the Jackpot Data Science Group webpage. That's who's hosting the event. And then, of course, direct inquiries can be sent to hackathon@jackpotinsights.com. Thank you. We hope this presentation was helpful, and we're really excited for you all to participate in the event.